The Daily Mail just released a chilling report on Hamas's sexual violence and atrocities on October 7. It goes well beyond what any of us ever imagined. Inbal Ratz Gilmore read the entire report. We're also going to cover the UAE and the tensions between the United Arab Emirates and Netanyahu. What does it all mean for the future of the Middle East? I'm Or Yissachar. Welcome back to Underscore. Don't miss a moment. Hit the subscribe button right now and be the first to watch the next episode. Inbal Ratz Gilmore is a researcher of American Jewry and contemporary antisemitism and a columnist. Hi, Inbal. Welcome to Underscore.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. Thank you very much. And look, let's talk about that Daily Mail report. There's an entity called the Civil Commission in Israel who went over well over 10,000 photos and videos of October 7. Interviewed witnesses, went over recorded witness testimonies, and what it found was chilling. Hamas did not just suffice with murdering and taking people hostages, but it was important for them to humiliate. And we have to ask ourselves why. The report goes well beyond, just harming people on the way. That was, as they said, a calculated strategy of Hamas to conduct sexual violence in Israel on October 7. You went through the chilling details of that report, and we tend to sort of overlook this aspect of war because it's socially a bit awkward, but it has to be said because the world has to know. When you read through this report, what do you see?
First of all, before we even start, we have to say that this project is led by Dr. Kochav El-Kayam Halevi, and we have to give her the credit. And I think what she's doing is unbelievable because she's going through those testimonies that it's over 430 people who testified. It's 1,800 hours of visual videos and photographs. And this whole analysis came down to a horrifying report that it took me, I need to take breaks while I was reading it because it was so horrifying, and I just needed to breathe. It describes a horrific picture of what Hamas did on that day and what they were planning to do. And I think for us, the Israelis, Jews around the world who are seeing this, it reminds us, other days where Jews were persecuted. It reminds us horrific stories from the Holocaust. And horrific stories even from this region in Israel in 1929 when the Hebron massacre happened. Those images are something that unfortunately as a Jewish woman I'm familiar with through our history. So when I read this report, it was just devastating as a human being, as a Jewish woman, as a mother. I'm a mother of 4 girls. And obviously, everything I've read was shaking my soul truly to the core. It was just unbelievable. And I think what was truly unbelievable is the fact that no one wanted to get into this, to investigate. That was something for me, who consider itself feminist, who expected the international organizations, women international organization, UN Women, to be the one who's leading these, investigations. That wasn't the case. They didn't want to get involved. They denied at first. They, ignored on purpose. And in certain cases, they even justified it. And that was, I think, the most devastating, fact for me. So if you go through the report all, and I have to warn you, it's really, really hard if you really go into all the details. It gives you a picture of how the entire world allowed this to happen. And if you like, I can explain. So basically the Palestinians, and it's a common knowledge now that the entire Palestinian population, not only in Gaza, also in the Judea and Samaria, the majority of them supported the atrocities that happened on October 7. There was different polls on that question, and it wouldn't have happened if the world didn't give the Palestinian the freedom to do whatever they want. And it's, this ongoing campaign to try to justify what the Palestinian has done on October 7, and in general the atrocities that have been happening through the years since the establishments of the state of Israel and even before, is being justified by portraying the Palestinian as the victims. It gives them the credit to do whatever they want. And the New York Times report, the fake report by Jack Christoph, that was just released, I think, a day before the Daily Mail released its report, with everything that was on. I don't know if you read it, but if
Yeah,
you didn't
well, no,
read
it's
it,
totally innocent timing that right on the day when they uncover the report on the sexual abuse of Israelis and many other nationalities, I have to say, on October 7, the New York Times chooses to publish this. And I don't accuse the newspaper itself, but the author who I think threw out the window all standards of journalism because Israel is concerned. And that's what we see systematically across the board.
it's true. And look, we have to admit, the New York Times has a history of publishing anti-Semites report and anti-Semites remarks, and this is not the first time. So, of course, it's not an innocent report that happened to be released just the day before. They were trying to minimize the damage of the Daily Mail report that was, like you said, 10,000 footage that, hours of analysis by professionals. And, it was funded by the philanthropic world and also by the German embassy in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not we can be naive and say that this is, something that they wanted to release anyway. But look, if you look into the article, you know that every fact it sounds like a blood label. That's what it is. And you see how the source of the report is someone who's linked to Hamas. And seriously, if you want the world to take you seriously, and if you want the world to believe what you're reporting, you cannot base your article on a source that is linked to Hamas. And that is something that we have to try to understand. And that the government of Israel, the Prime Minister Netanyahu,
Mm-hmm.
and the Foreign Affairs Minister Gideon Sa'ar decided to sue the New York Times and Jack Christoph for this article. So I think for the first time, Israel is taking a stand. The first time in the past few years. I don't know if it happened in the past where Israel stood against the New York Times. But this is a very important stand that the state of Israel is taking, and I think we should try to understand why was it so important for the New York Times to release this article just before the Daily Mail. We have to look at the bigger picture of a systematic attempt to try to create an equation where what happened on October 7, what Hamas did, the atrocities that they committed, is equal to what is the IDF is doing, fighting, protecting the state of Israel. And have to remind you, because people forget this, but the terrorists, while they're committing these atrocities, call their families to brag. And they were not only supported by their families, it was something that was very, very visible on the footage that were coming out of Gaza in I think the first 2 weeks before Israel, started the operation.
So
And
other
you
terror
remember that?
regimes, yeah. Sorry, no, just
You
to
remember the
say
footage
that.
and from Gaza before Israel started? You remember?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, other perpetrators usually try to conceal their deeds. And in Hamas's case, they bragged about it. They themselves, much of the evidence was their own body cams when they
Right.
or phone calls where they brag about what they did, and they confessed in interrogations that did exactly that.
So I think this is something that the world doesn't want to see. And unfortunately, a very small fraction of the Israeli people still to this day refuses to see, and they're still, looking at this, whole Palestinian issue as something that could be resolved without looking at reality. The reality is that, like I said before, and by the admission of the Palestinians themselves, the majority of the Palestinian people supported those atrocities. They didn't seem like this is something that is unacceptable. It didn't seem that it is something that, as a society, they should object to. It's something that's been glorified. It's something that's been, paid for. We know that the Palestinian Authority is paying for terrorists. This is not something new. So, I mean, for us, it was a wake-up call in the sense of what they were capable of doing. But I think we're still in the process of understanding how it's affecting us, and I'm not sure that we have the bottom line yet. I think for me as a Jewish woman, and I think for the Jewish people in general, and that I can tell you from, researching contemporary anti-Semitism, this is something that is very hard for us to understand and process. That kind of hate that we talked about, how it's part of our history. This is not a new thing, and I think in since Israel was established, we haven't seen that kind of atrocities and that kind of organized attempt to do it. Their plans were to continue and to do it all over Israel. They, if the IDF wasn't, not only IDF, we have to also remember that also civilians participated in defending everything that happened since October 7th. The first few days, they were just people left their homes and went to save their brothers and sisters in the Gaza envelope. So these atrocities, I think it's going to take us a very, very long time to understand and to try to figure out how to proceed with everything that has to do with the Palestinian question. I think it is something that is very clear to every Israeli that whatever was before no longer is relevant to the way we're going to address this issue. I know a lot of people who had hopes for the peace process with the Palestinians, and the majority of them is just I can't believe that this is something that is possible.
Well, Inbal, you suffered the consequences of Palestinian violence yourself. You lost your first husband to a terrorist attack, and
Right.
there's no one more befitting to testify on the scale of education and incitement for violence among Palestinian society. It does not follow that 100% of Palestinians are in favor of that, but it is very disturbing that it is a sufficient amount to testify on a society that glorifies violence. Like you said, early on in the war, 85% of Palestinians, both Judea and Samaria and Gaza, were supportive of October 7. And we have to ask ourselves a serious question about whether or not it's a peace process, so-called, between a democracy like Israel and a society like the Palestinians, and what it means for the next steps. If not only people deny, and I know of people who did like all those fact-finding missions in Palestinian cities and in the Arab world, and they deny the sexual violence because Israel claims that, even though Hamas claims it itself, bragging about it, because anything that portrays Jews as victims is off the table. But also they encourage it once they, at the same time, they both deny it and encourage it. Not sure how it's possible. And they love the idea of Jewish people being targeted. And you see it not by, your stigmatic sheikh with the kafia and those religious garbs, but by ordinary people on the street. And that is terrifying to watch. I mean, children who grow up in Palestinian cities are often incited that murdering Jews is a sought after mission. How do you start even with society like this?
Well, it's a very, very important question. And also, you mentioned my personal loss. So, my personal loss wasn't from, this terrorist organization, Hamas. It was led by the Fatah, by the 417, which was the presidential guard of Yasser Arafat. That was an attack that was led from the Muqata. So, people tend to idealize the situation and say, no, this is just the radicals and the Palestinians, the Hamas, the jihadic Islam, and this is not the mainstream. No, but this is the mainstream. We just have different tactics of how to get what they want, and what they want is to annihilate our existence here. And as we can see what's happening around the world, and I can tell you because I'm a researcher of American Jewry, and I was looking into the campuses way before, everybody were looking into it. I wrote a report on it in 2018 that basically predicted everything that happened after October 7, including the organizations who led the protests there. So the attempt of the Palestinian to try to annihilate us is unfortunately the mainstream idea and ideal. And I have to be honest with you, I met Palestinians who truly reject the atrocities. They are disgusted by it, and I'm telling you, I am sure that if they were asked to participate, they would have risked their lives and said no. They would have said no. But the sad thing is, and it comes back to education, like you mentioned, that the majority is not there, and I think it would take them 50 years to get there if they would start a process of de-radicalizing their educational system, right now they're not even close. They're
Right.
getting, this open check from the world, specifically from Europe, by the way, to continue educate their kids on hating Jews and the fact that we have no right here in this region. And so it's something that if the world is not going to be, if they're not going to force, it's every time there's talks about peace process, the common ground is that the force should be on Israel. Israel is the one who's being portrayed as the one who refuses to peace. But the Palestinians not only refuses to peace, they refuse to stop idealizing terrorism and educating their little kids to murder Jews and to spread hate around the world. This campaign is not, only in the Palestinian territory. It goes all over the world. It infected the Arab world. It is something that is very well spread in Europe for many, many years, and they managed to establish I have to say, in a very big success, a campaign against Israel in Americans' Ivy Leagues against Israel. And if you look into this campaign, you see the undertone that is, based on anti-Semitism. This is not your average, normal, reasonable criticism of Israel, which is allowed. Israel is not perfect, but it is way beyond that. And the way they are leading this campaign, it's not going to get us towards peace. It's going to basically we have to admit we're preparing to defend ourselves and to prevent, not only to be on the defensive, to prevent any acts like what happened on October 7 from Judea and Samaria and from other areas. And I have to tell you, I've seen a demonstration on the University of Tel Aviv yesterday, and what they were chanting over there is very alarming. So we have to keep our eyes open also to what's happening here within the Arab Israeli society to make sure that something like that won't happen within Israel. So there's a lot of concerns for us, but we, as a Jewish woman, I can say that we're very hopeful and we're strong, and we have a very long history of not only fighting the people who are trying to annihilate us. We have something to contribute to the world, and we're focusing on that as well.
I think we're the number one contributors to the world, but that,
Yes.
well, we're not objective in that sense to attest that. You mentioned the international community rationalizing the Palestinians, and that leads me to look at the actors who not only rationalize them, but outright support them and side with their claims. Those who are supposed to be looked up on as, the genius experts from the UN or independent journalists who are outright activists for the Palestinian cause. And I think it has deeper reasons, maybe anti-Israelism, maybe anti-Semitism, maybe the understanding that clickbait and traffic is number one other than the truth. We got people like Mehdi Hassan and Bassem Youssef who deny sexual violence allegations and rape on October 7. They outright say that the Israelis using these claims to propagate genocide in Gaza and all these things. And UN Women that you mentioned, we also have the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls. This is a lady who's supposed to do it for a living. She's called Raymond Salem from Jordan. You're all paying for that, by the way, dear viewers. The UN rapporteurs on violence against women and girls, she says that there is no evidence for rape on October 7, and Israel is using it to prop genocide in Gaza. And of course, how can we not mention Francesca Albanese, the big Western hater, Israel hater, who is not, the roundest pebble in the river, but she's paid very well to say that there is no evidence. She said that in interviews many times. There is no evidence for sexual violence on October 7, and why do Western leaders keep talking about it? She wonders. Now, I have to say, the Palestinians are doing their thing. They manufacture terrorism, and it's Israel's job to fight them. But the international community, on its part, is not calling out those people who are outright participating in that. And I'm curious to know from your experience, where does it come from? Is it, like I said, like sort of a desire for attention, or is it actual animosity to Israel? Where does that come from?
I think it's animosity for Jews, and I think we should stop. We're afraid to say that anti-Semitism is very much present, and if it wasn't very loud before October 7, it wasn't because it didn't exist. It was just before it was hidden very, very well behind civil rights and behind big words of liberalism and equal rights and unfortunately it was always there. And I'm not saying everybody's anti-Semite. I know so many people who are not Jewish and they're not anti-Semites, and they're standing beside us and not only supporting us but helping us to confront this issue, and they're fighting along our side, fighting anti-Semitism. So, but you mentioned the UN and different international organizations that everybody's paying for them to do the work that Dr. Kochav El-Kayam Alevi did, and they're not interested in that because they are. Look, we're not going to analyze now why anti-Semitism exists. I think that's different reasons. I think it helps people to not concentrate on their issues, and they need someone to hate. Maybe it comes from jealousy. I don't know. But the bottom line is that it's worth your while to be an anti-Semite. It pays very well. And it's being supported by the Arab world. And the Arab world, unfortunately, maybe except for a few countries who were less participant in this anti-Semite campaign, is refusing to accept our existence in this region. And the message to Europe, who has the largest responsibility for the annihilation, the attempt to annihilate the Jewish people with the Holocaust. It's easier for them to look at us and say, they must be like us. And what we were capable to do, they're capable of doing. And, and there isn't any real attempt not only to achieve peace, to make the Palestinian lives better. This whole, peace, not campaign. It's something that pays off very, very well.
Well, they must be like us. I think they are very good at making demands to Israel and force it to compromise. But when it comes to the Arab world and the Palestinians, I don't know, maybe it comes from deterrence or the lack of will to enact power, but they just don't seem to be exacting any demands, any significant demands from the Palestinians in this process.
No, absolutely not. They're pretty much allowed to do and behave. And look, you see what's going on in Europe, and you understand that it's also an eternal pressure
Yeah.
to, in a way, to try to make peace with their, like, the Arabs and the radicals that they have within their countries. Okay, the radicals, the Muslims, the radical Islam in their country. And I'm sure, by the way, that the Muslims who are not radicals are being silenced, and I'm sure they're
Yeah,
afraid to speak up.
absolutely.
I'm
And there are
sure
many
of
of them.
it, because this is not something that is being rewarded. What's being rewarded is to attack Israel, is to blame Israel for atrocities that Israel was never committed atrocities like, we're being accused on a daily basis. And if you see it, the New York Times as an example, what they reported, this, you read it, it's ridiculous. I mean, it is ridiculous. And the imagination of the claims that, and the blames of the Israeli soldiers and the IDF is truly ridiculous. And it's sad that that the UN and different organizations not only did not bring peace to the world, they made the world worse than it was. Really, they weren't able to help countries resolve regional conflicts. There's like millions of billions of dollars being spent, and euros, on this whole UN and its proxies, and none of that made our life any better, and especially the Palestinian. And you know what? If you're looking at the Palestinian society and you're saying, okay, we're going to put the adults aside, okay, we talked about the kids and what they're learning in school. Kids are just kids, and you can't really blame the kids what their parents are doing.
Right.
They're the victims of the Palestinians and the European, the entire European establishments,
Right.
the
And they are
UN
funneling
and the
millions.
EU.
Yeah.
They're funding millions, and at the end of the day, Palestinian kids are being brought up to become terrorists. That's their entire education.
Isn't that a war crime,
How to
Inbal?
become
To educate children to become terrorists?
It is, and no one is doing anything about it. And I guess they like to see those kids suffer. I don't believe that they truly care about their future and about what happens to them. And for the Israeli side, for us,
Yeah. Or there is fundamentally no blame with the Palestinians. I'm not sure they enjoy watching children suffer, but they just don't, either they're not sufficiently aware or they don't sufficiently care. Like you said, I mean, it just distracts from accusing Israel and the US for all the malaise of
yes,
the Middle East. So why do it?
It's happening for so long now, and all the organizations, the human rights organizations, are working in Gaza and the Judea and Samaria area. Are launching reports that most of them are based on no facts, just testimonial of people who are linked to terrorists in almost every report. And like I said, it's not that the state of Israel is perfect, and there aren't any incidents where, but Israel is looking at a society. Israel doesn't praise people who are doing things wrong in a operating in a wrong way. People are not. People in Israel do not fund that kind of behavior. We don't name our schools on people who hurt people
Right.
for no reason. So there's like a major gap that I think the world is not aware of.
Inbal, I wanted to cover another topic with you, and that's the recent UAE-Israel tension, I would say. That came as a surprise, and it relates to the broader, war that ensued October 7, and now, of course, epic fury. In Hebrew, it's called Roaring Lion, and the whole war that the Middle East has sort of descended into and deteriorated into following the escalation of October 7. And the UAE and Israel, I remind our viewers, signed the Abraham Accords in 2020. Yes, 4 countries are members of those accords, but it seems that the UAE has been holding the warmest of them all, be it because Dubai and Abu Dhabi are major financial centers, be it because they are their character as a nation. But flights to Dubai and Abu Dhabi did not cease all across or during the war, and that's not obvious given how many the amount of cancellations by international airlines. You have billions of dollars in mutual trade, and of course, very intimate defense relations. And during the recent war with Iran, it was reported that Israel helped the UAE a lot by setting up air defense systems against drones and against missiles. Now it seems that the whole Israel-UAE relations are coming a bit under strain. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he published this. In the midst of Operation Roaring Lion, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu secretly visited the United Arab Emirates, where he met with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. The visit has led to a historic breakthrough in relations between Israel and the UAE. And I would remind our viewers that it is not completely unrelated, maybe, to an earlier announcement by the head of Mossad that he visited there, and him and Netanyahu are not in the best of terms right now. And then today, by the way, it was published that the IDF chief of staff, Eyal Zamir, also visited the UAE. So there's a whole feud with Israeli senior officials going to the UAE. And now the UAE published the following. The UAE categorically denies all rumors regarding a visit by the Israeli Prime Minister or the reception of any Israeli military delegation. There are no secret arrangements whatsoever, and all such claims are fabricated and false. Our relations with Israel are fully transparent and governed by the Abraham Accords. No room for rumors or conspiracies. Okay, so they didn't like that. The question is, what's going to happen right now? Obviously, Netanyahu wants to brag. Look, I came to the UAE. I met with delegations. We're leading a historic breakthrough in the Middle East. And the Emiratis are a bit more prudent about the whole thing. What's your take on it?
First of all, I was really surprised by their approach and their reaction to this because, look, we are different people, like I said, after October 7. We are less patient for that kind of behavior. Yeah. We've been, when it's been talked about how Israel put defense systems for the Amorites. The way the Israeli society accepted this was amazing. It seemed like the natural thing. Yes, these are our allies, and we're going to do whatever we can do to protect our allies. So for us, Israelis and Jews, it is something that is very, very natural. And then to see that kind of behavior, I think it's a really bad habit that the Arab world should really get rid of. It was accepted in Israeli society before October 7. But this is something that is no longer accepted by us. If you don't respect our leaders, and I think they also get confused by how there's the minority in Israel who thinks that this is what the Arab world is capable of, to accept us only up to a point. And I think that this is the message that they're getting from that minority in Israel, and they are missing the majority of the Israeli people who is looking at this in a very, very bad way. Mm-hmm. And they're putting a very big question mark on the future. And it's such a shame because I think the Emirates did certain they took certain steps in the past. Even when we talked about educating their children, we talked about the Palestinian. What a big difference. They changed their educational system in order to, raise their kids without the hate, the natural hate that is spread around the Arab world towards the Jews. So, and there's a lot going on behind the scene for many, many, many years. But after October 7, and after everything that Israel has been done to protect them, to protect the Amorites, all the collaborations that's, most of what's happening we don't even aware of.
Right, absolutely.
To behave this way, this is, I think, damaging the chances of having something that would be an example for the rest of the Arab world for sure, but also for the rest of the world. And so I was very, very disappointed, and I think it started a conversation within the Israeli majority of how to approach this issue. And if they're going to make the mistake of listening to a very certain mediators, they would find themselves losing the support of the majority of Israel. Because even with the Palestinian issue, there is this, the left, or a specific group in the left, led always the negotiations. They were at the lead of this. It didn't get us nowhere. You gotta take the wider picture, and you have to bring the everybody's voices into this. And I think by taking this approach, they're ignoring the majority of the Israeli people, and their the fact that they chose their leader. This is a democratic state, and Netanyahu is our prime minister. And we, as Israelis, the majority of the Israelis, even though after October 7, and there's criticism over, maybe the conception that was before October 7, and it's something that we should have, and we should look into that. However, there are so many things that Netanyahu changed after October 7. His approach to the threats on Israel, and the society in Israel see that, and so not only that they should respect our prime minister regardless to what the discussion within Israel, they should also understand that Netanyahu and his approach after October 7, everything that he led, is something that is the way the Israeli society, the majority of the Israeli society, sees as the way to approach, the way to go in the future. This is how we see the future. We are not going to be responsive to threats. We're going to initiate, in order to prevent what happened to us. And in order to do that, we're going to establish relationships, and every country that would take part in making sure that the state of Israel is secured is going to it's going to be very, very rewarding. We have a lot to offer.
I agree, and about the not only did Netanyahu change, I think the Israeli society changed with him, and because of October 7. And I remember, statements by senior officials in the European Union who said, and even Chuck Schumer himself at some point, the minority leader in the Senate in the US, who said, basically, Netanyahu is highly unpopular in Israel. Therefore, most Israelis don't support what you're doing in Gaza. And I think it's fundamentally wrong to conflate the politician and the policy. A politician will always be controversial. Okay, Netanyahu is far from perfect, but I think many of the deeds that he's doing are supported by the majority of Israelis, because Gaza, after October 7, most Israelis said, you know what? we're done with them. We need to get rid of Hamas. And Iran, I think most
Sure.
Israelis agree that you should not have nuclear weapons. So all these things in Lebanon, the threat by Hezbollah is intolerable. I think the policy is supported, but what's gone on here is that I think the old reflex, the Pavlovian reflex of the Arab world is sort of, enjoying both worlds, both rapprochement, like getting closer to Israel for their own benefit, and also denying it in public. They always do it, like a secret lover. You do it behind closed doors, and I think that's
Right. That's a very
the
good
Abraham Accords
way
were
of
marriage. There was not a
describing it.
lover anymore, and
True.
I just think it detached from the mood right now. Like enough with this already. You both do it and you deny it. It's not how things are supposed to work right now.
True. We're questioning everything right now. We're
Mm.
questioning absolutely every peace agreement that we have. We're looking into what Egypt did before October 7 and what it's doing since. We're looking into everything. That the majority of the Israelis right now doesn't trust nobody. That's the truth,
Right.
except for our American allies who and President Donald Trump, and Marco Rubio, and the ambassador Mike Huckabee. So who are our true allies, even if President Trump is leading, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit, leading this, he has his own approach on how to get what he needs from Iran, and maybe right now it's a little bit endangering us, especially in Lebanon. But right now, we are reviewing as Israelis, the public, reviewing every agreement that we have. Everything is on the table. We
Right.
are having those discussions. I'm sure you know it. We are looking into everything, and I think this is something that the Amorites should take under consideration, to try to go past the immediate mediators, the old school mediators, like you said, and to try to listen to what's happening on the ground. And something like this could really break the trust that is starting to build. And this is not something that we will accept. And it doesn't matter if the majority of people of Israel supports Netanyahu. I think it does, and it's the fact are that the majority of the Israelis support Netanyahu. But even if it wasn't the case, and it doesn't matter who's going to be our prime minister, you are going to respect our prime minister, okay? And this is something that I think they should understand, that past October 7, we lost the patient for that kind of behavior. And the world should change. The Arab world should change. They should change their approach. They're not going to benefit much if they're going to continue using the old tactics in this conflict. They're not going to get what they want from us. Like I said, over and over again, we lost our patient after October 7. I think if you read the report that the Daily Mail released, you understand why we lost patient, why we lost the ability to trust, and why we will do absolutely anything to defend our country, our people, and Jewish around the world. And they need to let that sink. And that should be the basic of everything they do in the future. That
Yeah,
should be something that they should understand.
absolutely. And not to disparage the UAE, because they're great partners, and I think they're fundamentally good people,
True.
and they're
True.
great partners of Israel and the United States. But I think, like you said, politically, I don't know if they're getting the mood in Israel that kind of going on taking it both sides, or holding the both sides of the stick. We both enjoy close relationship with Israel, and we don't want to go out of our way to make it public, as in Netanyahu visiting the UAE. There were no cameras. Shah Mohammed bin Zayed never visited Israel in a state visit, so they are. It reminds me a little bit like the peace with Egypt, but not entirely. I think with the UAE, it's a genuine, true partnership and peace. And then those reactions, I think, they are just sort of echoes of the old world. That they feel like they have to play by the old rules. But curious to know what you think. Why now? I mean, why would Netanyahu publish something like that right now? Because the head of Mossad, David Barnea, published something very similar just a few days before, and the timing of it may have to do a little bit more with internal domestic Israeli politics than Netanyahu wanting to out his relationship with the UAE, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And also, I think, it's a good thing. And it also signals to the rest of the Arab world, it pays off to be within an alliance with the state of Israel. It's a very powerful country that is basically changing, the entire region right now. Okay?
Right.
The fact that Israel is fighting Iran, who is the evil force of who basically funding terrorism around the world, threatening America, threatening the Jewish people. This is threatening the Amorites. So I think this is something that they should understand. Israel is not the country that it was before October 7. And I think it takes them longer to understand that and to read the map. And like I said, the mediators, their job in this is crucial. And I think they're getting they're falling into the Israeli politics. I wouldn't think that it's the best way to plan the future agreements, because, by the way, as you know, all the predictions when it comes to Netanyahu, they always failed in the past, and also it's not even about Netanyahu. This is an argument within the Israeli society. And if you are taking part in that argument, you are distancing yourself from a majority of the Israeli people. And again, we are reviewing our relationship with the Arab world, peace agreements, and we are no longer accepting the behind the scenes agreements. And I think the Amorites, like you said, they're great allies. I think they would benefit more if they would not participate in this game of hiding the relationship that they have in Israel. I think they can only gain more if they expose proudly that they have a relationship with the state of Israel, especially with the Israeli people, and also especially because the war with Iran is not finished, and
Right.
it could affect them dramatically, and they're going to need our support and protection, unless they have other way to protect themselves. I think Israel was the first to protect them. Even before the Americans. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Israel, provided everything it can to protect the Amorites. And by denying direct connection with our prime minister, is not the right gratitude to that. And if the Amorites want to strengthen the connection with Israel and with the Israeli society, they shouldn't hide their relationship with us no longer.
I agree, and there's certainly more to come in the story. The UAE has been a trendsetter of peace between Israel and the Arab world, and I hope that tensions would be a bit eased, and because this partnership is so crucial for combating Iran and mutual threats, be it nuclear weapons program of Iran or regional terrorism. I think the partnership there is super critical, and but it's interesting to follow for sure. And with that, Inbal Ratz Gilmore, thank you so much for coming on Underscore.
Thank you, O.
And thank you, our viewers. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next episode.